Hey guys, Ulysses here. It's been a while, but here's a new video. I'm boiling in my room. It is literally 30 something degrees outside and I have no air conditioner and I'm running gigantic lights. So yep, I'm burning, but let's go on with the video. In today's video, I wanted to talk about a camera that I've been using for approximately a year or so, but I haven't talked about too much. But I've actually been using it pretty heavily, and it's staring at me right now here because I'm using it for a video. And that is the Canon EOS R. Now on this channel, I don't really do too many, what would you say, like gear-oriented videos, but to be honest, the Canon R5 and R6, I'm actually pretty hyped about it because I've been using the EOS R for a year, and again, like I've been putting some work in it. So today's video will revolve around the Canon EOS R, and I'll try to break this down in 3 sections, which is why I think the EOS R is still a very good camera, what some of the demerits are, and maybe like a slight, I don't want to call it a comparison, but kind of a rant about the EOS R versus R5, R6, and RP. If you ended up watching this video because you just want to know how the EOS R compares to the R5, R6, and RP, then you can skip to the part of the video which I'll talk about that, which is the third part. Before I get too much into the camera itself, I wanted to provide some background, I guess, as to why I have the camera and some purposes that I've been using the camera for. So before I got the Canon EOS R approximately a year ago, I just mainly shot, candid photos and maybe some portraits and some, commercial work. And I shot mainly with Leicas and sometimes Fujis. And as I was getting more and more photography work, I wanted a camera that is simple to use and can do the simple jobs or tasks really quickly and efficiently. I also was planning on creating a YouTube channel. Hi. And this is where we're at now, right? And I had no experience in video whatsoever, by the way. Yeah, because I was, and I guess kind of still am, an amateur, filmmaker-ish guy, I want to review this camera more from a hybrid shooter's point of view, with a little bit more of a focus on photography, and for videography for people that are, again, beginners to filmmaking. So yeah, going back to me shooting Leicas and some Fujis in the past, the Canon EOS R was just more than enough for me, to be honest. I mean, even before I'm going to explain the merits of the camera, I'm just gonna say that it was more than enough for me, and it still is, and I'm sure it is for most people, to be honest. And that's my general opinion of the camera. It's a very good camera, but yeah, let's explain that going forward. Okay, so let's get on with part 1, the general merits of the EOS R. The first one I wanted to talk about is 30 megapixels. Yes. I guess when you use it, or when people think of the EOS R, you kind of forget about the 30 megapixel count. It's actually pretty high, and I guess just because most people associate the EOS R with being kind of like a basic, not beginner, but kind of like a gateway-ish camera. Yeah, you kind of forget about how high the megapixel count is. So yeah, there's a lot of freedom of cropping. Photos look nice, I have no complaints. And next, autofocus. Yes, this is very fast. I have done no scientific comparisons, but again, coming back from myself mainly shooting manual focus, just having this blazing fast autofocus is pretty insane. For photography, I've shot moving subjects for portraits with this autofocus. It's very reliable. It nails it pretty much all of the time. And for video, I don't know what everyone else's experience is with other DSLRs and mirrorless cameras for video, but I find it pretty insane how reliable the autofocus is on this camera for video. Even for just like this simple talking head stuff, I've never seen the autofocus go on anything else than my head or my face or my eyes. And also when vlogging too, I've never seen it hunt, which is pretty crazy, I think, because I don't know, I'm not a person that's too savvy with video, so I don't always know 100% what I'm doing, but it works. Yeah. The next one, or next ones, I guess, is the screen and the touch screen. So the screen, or the back LCD, is really good. It's a flip out screen, so for videos like this, and when you have no friends, it's very reliable and very useful. You get to check your framing and whatnot, so it's very helpful. And also, what I never would have known that I would like this much is the touch functionality of the LCD. I have never ever used a screen that is this responsive, except for maybe like, an iPhone or iPad or something like that. It's very fast. I've always felt like touch screens on cameras have always been kind of gimmicky, but this one is very, very reliable. And it's very responsive. And one of the best usages I have been getting out of this is you can scroll through video actually, with the touch screen. So you can, drag the cursor through, an hour-long video that you recorded on it, and then go to, the 30-minute mark or something. And some other cameras that I've used didn't have that, I think. So it's very, very handy. Next up is the lens lineup. Now, this isn't, specifically about the camera itself, but for the Canon EOS R series, I feel like the lens lineup has become really, really good. And I have one native lens that I'm using, which is a 24-70 f2.8 with stabilization, I think. And it's amazing. It's actually pretty much enough for whatever I've done. It's been putting in some work. Let's just call it that. And it's a great lens. It's very sharp, I guess. It's fast. It's bulky, but yeah, still. And I'm assuming that, and I've heard also that the other lenses are also very good. So yeah, that's another merit of having a Canon EOS R series camera. And if you get a lens with lens stabilization, it's actually pretty good. It's pretty good. The R5, R6 will have in-body stabilization. So for video, I'm sure that those will be much better options. But in my experience, having the EOS R with a stabilized native lens and using it for vlogging or something has been enough. There are times where I feel like it could have been maybe a little bit better in terms of stabilization, but it has been enough and it has been working. So yeah, props to Canon for making that work. And the last one, and the one that I've been abusing the most probably, is actually the 1080p footage that comes out of the EOS R. I don't know what they've done with this, but the 1080p footage that comes out of the EOS R is pretty good. And actually, most of my footage is 1080p out of the EOS R. And as a beginner filmmaker, this has made my life so much easier, and it makes so much sense because the file sizes are much smaller, and I use the neutral profile in the EOS R, which makes my life a little bit easier because I have less experience in grading my footage. I think there are just so many things that you need to think of and do for filmmaking, and having some of those steps removed initially are very, very helpful. For example, let's talk about gear a bit. If you're a beginner filmmaker like me, or you're trying to get into video, for example, you probably don't have a computer that can handle editing 8K raw footage or something like that, let's say, or even 4K log footage. It's a lot of work on the computer, and if you don't have the right tools, I'm sure your life will be pretty miserable. So yeah, again, 1080p, I dig it. I kind of hope the R5 and R6 also have really nice 1080p. I'm not too sure, but yeah, looking forward to it. Okay, part 2 is some things that I don't like, or some functionalities or things that I don't particularly use in this camera. First one, I've heard this from other filmmakers, and photographers too, is that the dynamic range seems to be a little bit low. And I do kind of agree. For photography, I guess if you're the type of person that's okay with your photos to be a little bit grainy, then you can underexpose and then bring up the shadows later, and then the image starts to look fine and you get the highlight details. But yeah, if you want clean images with high dynamic range, it might not work. Yeah, and for video, yeah, it's not, the dynamic range isn't it's not very good, to be honest. But yeah, again, it's enough for me because I'm still a beginner filmmaker. Next is buttons. Yeah, I feel like sometimes the camera is really easy to use and sometimes it's really a pain. I'm kind of conflicted on my opinion here, but there's definitely some buttons that I never use. And again, obviously because I've been shooting Leica mostly, there's going to be a bunch of buttons that I don't use anyways. But even from that standpoint, there's some things that I feel like are kind of unnecessary, like the touch bar, obviously. Next one, the raw files. So kind of going back to the image, I said the images seem pretty flexible, which is accurate. Other side of the coin, it means that the raw files are super flat. So I shoot mainly with the Canon EOS R and the Leica Q. And the thing is, for the Leica Qs, you get DNGs. So the raw files, or the DNGs, are very saturated and contrasty from the start point, which I like. But yeah, for example, if I put them into Lightroom together side by side, then the Canon files look so much more terrible because I guess the raw files are just made really, really, really flat. And sometimes they're so flat to the point where I kind of have a hard time getting the color back into the files. I'm not sure if this is just me. If anyone has experience with this, please let me know in the comment section. Next, obviously, the 4K crop on the video. Yeah, this is, I mean, again, like, because the 1080p is so good, it's not, for me, it's not that much of a complaint. But yeah, sometimes when I want that extra quality for my video, having that pretty much like 1.5, no, it was more than that. It's like 1.6 or something, right? I forgot. But that crop is very, very heavy. So yeah, me no likey. And also the 120 frames per second footage. You can only take it in 720p. Yeah. And I've done it before, but yeah, it doesn't look too good, to be honest. It's not too usable. Sometimes you can get away with it, but mostly kind of, yeah, don't use it, yeah. And lastly, not again specific to the EOS R, but the series, is that lenses are great, but they're really expensive and they're big. Yeah. So you do have options of buying EF lenses and adapting them, but the native RF lenses are very expensive. I guess because they are high quality though. And they're big. They're big as hell. Like, it's a mirrorless camera, but it still ends up being really heavy. So I kind of hope they come up with lighter lenses for specific usage, I guess. Like, hopefully they can think of ways of creating high quality but lightweight primes, maybe. I'm looking forward to that in the future. So let's get on with the last part of the video, which is comparing it to the R5, R6, and maybe the RP. This is going to be more of a rant, I would say, rather than a fair comparison, because again, the R5, R6 isn't out yet. I've never used the RP, and also I don't have a pre-production model of the R5, R6. I think generally speaking, the EOS R can be replaced by the R6. Or generally, if you're thinking of getting the EOS R, it might be better to invest in a Canon EOS R6. However, the big differentiator here is obviously the price. So from lowest to highest, the prices of these cameras are the Canon EOS RP comes at about, I think, $900. The Canon EOS R comes at around $1,800, I believe. the EOS R6 is at $2,500, and the Canon EOS R5 is, I think it was at like $3,500, I think. Yeah, so interestingly, they all have their own price points, and it'll be interesting to see how these fluctuate after the R5 and the R6 come out. So if the RP and the Canon EOS R will have lower prices after that. Now, solely judging by the current prices of these products, I would say that the Canon EOS R is at a very strange place, I would say, because functionality-wise, it can totally be replaced by the R6, or obviously the R5 too, but the R5 is sometimes a little bit too overkill, and I'm sure that you've watched other videos regarding the Canon EOS R5 and R6, but yeah, the specs are, incredible on the R5. So this is my opinion of where I think all these cameras stand at. I believe the Canon EOS RP is more for very beginner hybrid shooters, I think. Because if you wanted a camera for just normal photography, then you can get something better than the RP for $1,000. So you're maybe you're a type of person that's thinking of taking video, and you're definitely going to shoot photos. So maybe the RP is good for you or that kind of person. I also am considering getting the RP for a second camera, so I can, add another maybe angle to my YouTube videos. And because, they share the same, because the Canon EOS RP shares the same lens as the R series, yeah, I can share those lenses. In terms of the Canon EOS R6 and the Canon EOS R, this camera, the big differentiator, I think, is how much of a focus you have on still photography. If you know that you're going to take more video, and you know that, or you're already a videographer and that's what, you get paid for, then obviously the R6 is a better option, period. But if you're maybe like me and, you still have a big focus on stills photography, and maybe, you still, maybe you take video, or maybe you kind of dabble in video, but you don't do anything too high production, then the Canon EOS R is still a good option to have. Also keep in mind that the R actually has more megapixels than the Canon EOS R6. Obviously megapixels aren't everything, and I'm sure Canon, with their new sensor for the R6, I heard it's the same as the 1DX Mark III, I believe. So I'm pretty sure, it has its own merits, but in just plain, megapixel count, because the Canon EOS R has an advantage there, then I'm sure, stills photographers can still enjoy the Canon EOS R a little bit more than the Canon EOS R6. Yeah. And lastly, obviously, if you have the money and you're a very heavy, you're very video focused, you do a lot of videography work, and you take some stills too, then definitely the R5 is a great camera to have. And again, yeah, generally I would say though, like if you have the money, then I would invest in a Canon EOS R6 without buying the Canon EOS R. But it also kind of depends on how good the Canon EOS R6 is. A lot of people talk about, I think, only specs too much, but yeah, I mean, if I listened to those people, then I would have never bought the Canon EOS R. And the EOS R is a camera that is much more than the specs that it has, I think. The images are nice. I like the images coming out of them most of the time. And also the video, again, people complain about not having 4K. But because the 1080 is so good, I'm pretty fine with that. So, what does this mean? This means that is the 1080p, for example, on the R6 going to be as good as the Canon EOS R? And because the sensor changed, how good is the autofocus going to actually be? How good are the images actually going to be? And it seems like for video, you can take 10-bit 422 for the Canon EOS R6 and the R5, but how good is it actually going to be? Because the video that you can get from the Canon EOS R is actually much better than what people thought it would be. So again, these opinions of mine were formulated from my standpoint of me being a working photographer, but also a noob-ass videographer or YouTuber. And yeah, for me, the EOS R is pretty much enough. But again, because I was thinking of adding a B cam, I am kind of thinking of getting the R6. I can't tell at this moment. It's a lot of money. But I was thinking of buying the RP and using that as a B cam, but I might get the R6 and use that as my main camera and use the Canon EOS R as my B cam. I'm not sure at this point, to be honest. But yeah, so that was the video. I just wanted to make this video because I'm actually interested in getting the R5 or the R6, and that's probably why this video was a little bit more ranty, I would say. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I hope this video was valuable to at least some people. I know there's a lot of videos going on about the R5 and R6, so that's why I still wanted to talk about the Canon EOS R, which is the origin of the R5 and R6, and explain my experiences of using this camera. Thanks for watching. This was Ulysses Aoki, and goodbye. Sayonara.